There is a place outside the ruins of Nishaper where the earth still gives up bone fragments after heavy rain. Farmers have found skulls there for centuries. Not buried in graves. Not arranged with ceremony. Scattered. Broken. Mixed into the dirt like gravel. Medieval travelers described towers of human heads standing there long after the city itself had vanished. Men separated from women. Women separated from children. The piles were counted carefully because the people who ordered the massacre wanted proof the extermination had been completed properly. This was not rage. That is the detail that matters. Rage burns hot and fast. What destroyed Central Asia in the early 13th century was colder than rage. It was methodical, administrative. A campaign measured in ledgers, population counts, irrigation systems dismantled one canal at a time. Entire cities erased not because the conquerors lost control, but because they never intended mercy to exist there in the first place. And the terrifying part is this. None of it was inevitable. In 1218, the most powerful empire in Central Asia received a caravan from the east. More than 400 merchants crossed the steppe carrying silk, silver, spices, gold, furs, lacquerware, and letters of peace. They traveled under the personal protection of a ruler many in the Islamic world still barely understood. The message attached to the caravan was respectful, almost humble. I consider you my neighbor. Let there be trade and friendship between us. The empire receiving that offer was the Khwarazmian Empire, stretching from Persia to the borders of India. Its ruler, Shah Muhammad II, commanded enormous armies, controlled some of the richest trade routes on earth, and believed himself untouchable. His court poets compared him to Alexander the Great. His officials called him the shadow of God. The caravan entered the border city of Otrar. That is where history split open. The governor of Otrar was a man named Inalchuk, uncle to the Shah through marriage. Sources disagree on what happened next. Some Persian chroniclers claim he accused the merchants of espionage. Mongol sources insist greed was the real motive. Others suggest the Shah himself quietly approved the seizure from the beginning. What nobody disputes is the ending. The governor confiscated every item in the caravan. Then he arrested the merchants. Then he executed them. Hundreds of traders slaughtered under diplomatic protection. One man reportedly escaped east carrying the news. And here is the moment most retellings rush past because it complicates the image people prefer of unstoppable barbarian conquest. The ruler who received that news did not invade immediately. He sent diplomats. That ruler was Genghis Khan. Before the massacres, before the burning cities, before the skull pyramids, there was still a chance to stop everything. Genghis Khan demanded only one thing: surrender the governor responsible for the killings. Admit the massacre was unauthorized. Punish the man who violated diplomatic law. By the standards of the medieval world, it was an astonishingly restrained response. The Shah had another option now. Hand over one provincial official and preserve an empire. Instead, he made the worst decision of his life. He executed the lead envoy. The other ambassadors had their beards burned and their heads shaved before being sent back east humiliated. Among Mongol and Turkic peoples, this was not a minor insult. It was degradation made public. A declaration that the men carrying the message were beneath dignity itself. When the mutilated envoys returned, the entire Mongol court saw them. According to Persian historian Adamalik Juvayni, Genghis Khan climbed a hill alone and remained there for 3 days in silence. When he descended, he announced only this: "It is decided." To understand what came next, you have to understand who Shah Muhammad had provoked. By 1218, Genghis Khan had already unified tribes that had spent centuries slaughtering each other across the steppe. He had survived starvation, enslavement, betrayal, tribal warfare, and imprisonment long before he became a conqueror. As a child, he watched his father die poisoned by rivals. His own clan abandoned his family afterward, leaving them to starve. He killed his older half-brother during a dispute over food. He was captured by enemies and escaped at night wearing a wooden collar around his neck, hiding submerged in freezing river water while search parties passed nearby. The man who emerged from those years built something the medieval world had never seen before. Not a tribal horde. A military machine. Mongol armies operated through strict decimal organization. Units of 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000. Officers were promoted by merit instead of noble birth. Discipline was absolute. If one soldier deserted, entire units could die beside him. Their cavalry could travel impossible distances without supply lines, living on dried meat, blood from their own horses, and fermented mare's milk. They communicated across battlefields using flags, smoke, and signal arrows. And by the time they turned west, they had already spent years fighting northern China, learning siege warfare from Chinese engineers. They knew how to destroy walls. They knew how to break cities. The Shah still believed numbers would save him. He dispersed his army across fortified cities, assuming the Mongols would bog down in endless sieges. On paper, it looked reasonable. In reality, he guaranteed every city would stand alone with no mobile reserve to reinforce the others. One by one, the Mongols isolated them. Then came the impossible maneuver. While one Mongol army marched openly toward Otrar, another force under Genghis Khan himself crossed the Kizilkum Desert, a wasteland so brutal the Shah considered it impassable. There were almost no reliable water sources. Summer temperatures could kill entire armies. The Mongols crossed it anyway. They emerged behind enemy lines deep inside territory the Khwarazmians believed secure. Suddenly, the city of Bukhara looked up and saw Mongol cavalry appearing out of the desert itself. Bukhara had been one of the intellectual centers of the Islamic world for centuries. Its mosques and libraries drew scholars from across Asia. Astronomy, medicine, theology, mathematics, all flourished there. Its defenders retreated into the citadel. The civilians were abandoned outside the walls. Genghis Khan entered the city almost unopposed. Persian chroniclers claim he rode into the main mosque and used it as a stable for Mongol horses. Whether literal or symbolic, the story survived because it captured how complete the humiliation felt to those who witnessed it. Then came the speech. Multiple sources preserve variations of the same statement. Genghis Khan told the people their suffering was punishment for the sins of their rulers. If you had not committed great sins, God would not have sent a punishment like me upon you. The citadel resisted briefly. When it fell, the soldiers were killed. Then the city burned. Libraries burned. Mosques burned. Manuscripts that existed nowhere else disappeared into smoke. Skilled artisans were spared only because the Mongols needed them elsewhere. Engineers, blacksmiths, weavers, scribes. They were marched east and absorbed into the empire. Everyone else was left with nothing. And the Mongols kept moving. Samarkand was next. 500,000 people lived there behind enormous walls fed by intricate irrigation canals built over centuries. The city held more than 100,000 defenders. It still collapsed within days. The Mongols surrounded it completely. No escape. No supplies. Then they baited part of the garrison into charging outside the walls. It was a trap. Mongol cavalry retreated deliberately, drawing the defenders farther from safety before closing around them from both sides. Thousands died in open ground while the city watched helplessly from the ramparts. Morale shattered. Soon factions inside Samarkand began surrendering. The Mongols entered. Again the artisans were separated. Again young men were conscripted for future assaults. Again the city's infrastructure was destroyed with terrifying precision. The irrigation canals feeding Samarkand were dismantled deliberately. That detail matters because conquest alone was not enough. The Mongols targeted the systems that made civilization possible there in the first place. Without irrigation, the farmland died. Without farmland, cities starved. Some regions devastated during the invasion would never fully recover their agricultural output again. While his empire collapsed, Shah Muhammad fled westward. He abandoned city after city. Governors refused him shelter. Generals deserted him. His family was captured one by one. Genghis Khan unleashed 2 commanders after him, Jeeb and Subutai. Their orders were simple. Find the Shah. Do not return until he is dead. Across Persia they rode, demanding surrender from every settlement they encountered. Some complied and survived battered but intact. Others resisted. Nishapur resisted. During the siege, A Mongol prince and son-in-law of Genghis Khan named Tekucher was killed by an arrow fired from the city walls. The response was annihilation. When Nishaper fell, the order reportedly came directly from the prince's widow. Every living thing was to die. Not just soldiers. Everyone. Men, women, children, animals. The city was emptied through slaughter. Then the heads were cut off and arranged into pyramids. Separate piles for men, women, and children.